All right, we are live on episode 26 of the Blue Crocus Experience. And I'm here with another one of the Callaways, Jason Callaway. I was telling your dad, I think I was telling him, I definitely thought, yeah, I said it in a comment on Facebook. He was like, you're going to get an earful from Jason. And I told him that I'm going to have to turn this into the Callaway show soon. I'm going to have the whole family on here soon. So Jason, we were talking a bit off there, but you have a cool story. Sorry, go ahead.
So it was really interesting, that you mentioned that it's going to turn into the Callaway show, but we get together every year, wintertime, most of us are in the contracting world, and we were all sitting around in February in California as a, big extended family, all of our daughters and brothers and sisters. And there was, I think there was only a couple people that are employed by other folks. And that's really weird to be sitting in a room like that because most people are employed by other people. Yeah. And it was an interesting experience kind of looking, and I was like, man, what in the world happened? I still don't know what happened, but.
So you're all either have started your own businesses or employed in the family business or what have you?
Yeah.
Wow. Because remind me again, was it 10 kids, 9 kids?
There's seven of us, 6 boys and 1 girl.
Okay. So it's a pretty big family for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it was. I always remember when we were growing up, it was pretty cool seeing what my dad did, that we got to go with him all the time, whenever it was safe for us to go with him. And growing up, you never really realize what he's actually teaching you until you have to apply it. And you're like, well, I guess I did get that lesson. And it's one thing leads to the next, and you turn out knowing a little bit more than you thought you did. And maybe he's not such a goofball after all.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. So tell me, you said you were in South Dakota, which is a stone's throw from where the family business is.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that journey and how that all came about. You started talking, and I was like, this is too good. We got to get this on air.
Yeah. So after high school, I went into the United States Marine Corps, did a couple deployments to Fallujah, Iraq.
Wow.
And got out in late 2008, moved back to Oregon where the folks are. I started going to school after, 6-8 months, a year, something like that. And I was like volunteer coaching for a wrestling team and just trying to do the school thing down there and go to college, like, we're told to do, not by my family, but societally.
Yep.
And I happened to run into some folks from University of Sioux Falls because they came into town for a tournament, and we were wrestling around at the high school I was volunteer coaching at. And they said, hey, you should come on out, it'd be a good time. And so that's how I got introduced to the University of Sioux Falls. And then I basically moved out to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 2,000 miles away, didn't know a soul. And the rest is history. I got a college degree. I didn't end up wrestling for them. They canceled the program, but I had good grades. So apparently I got academic scholarships. And yeah, I found a wife, found some kids, found a business.
There you go. Let's wrap it up. Good stuff. Yep. No, thanks for your service. That's that's not nothing to sniff at. Maybe we can dive into some stories you have there as we go through.
Okay.
But so you finished college and then what happened?
So while I was going to school,
what did you take anyway?
So I majored in entrepreneurial studies, which is essentially a business degree with critical thinking skills is all it is, because there's a lot of case studies and hey, what would you do? And you got to look at each side of the coin and figure out what to do. So that's what I don't even know what it's called. It's a 4-year degree in entrepreneurial studies.
Yeah.
Put a lot of weight into that. But graduated from there.
So it's like
University.
2012 when you graduated?
13.
Okay.
And got married to my wife same year. And I have a stepdaughter, Kimber, and a 4-year-old daughter, Bergen. And
Nice.
yeah, it's been quite the show. So while I was going to school, I was working for a mining and paving company in South Dakota.
Yep.
They've got a couple asphalt plants, a concrete plant, 8 rock pits, and a rock quarry. And I was managing their shop and their equipment purchases on the daily level, not like the big equipment purchases, but like all the maintenance stuff.
Sure.
So from toilet paper all the way up to tires and engines and stuff. But then my wife got into grad school. She's a nurse. And so she was applying for nurse anesthesia school. And she got accepted a year ahead of where she applied to. And so that basically gave us 6 weeks to kind of figure out what we were going to do. That school was 300 miles away. I was working for somebody 70, 80 hours a week. It was a career level job. I mean, it was a good job, good people to work for. And yeah, I called my dad and I said, hey, what do you think I should be doing here? And he said, you've always said you're probably going to do something on your own. Maybe this is that point. And the rest is history. Started with, we paid our bills and didn't have an awful lot left. And I had 2 days of work lined up and started moving and shaking.
So you I'm assuming you moved to the town where she was going to school, the city?
Yeah, so we did the first couple months, sold our house in Sioux Falls, moved up to Minneapolis for a year and a half, and then she started doing her rotations, like a residency clinical thing. And so as soon as she was gone all the time, we're like, hey, we got to get back to South Dakota because it was really tough up there for me just starting out, not having contacts in a big metropolis up in Minneapolis. And I had already had a little bit of success in Sioux Falls. I had worked 2-3 months on my own down here and things are okay. You just treat people well and they respond well.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that experience up there. I went a couple months without working and
Really?
Yeah, I was really, really trying to find stuff to do. And I actually subcontracted a couple times, which that's not normal for me. We manage all of our own projects. And from there, I kind of realized like, hey, I don't need to be a subcontractor ever again based on those experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you basically quit your job at the paving place or the paving inquiry place. Talk about the journey here, because I think a lot of people listening are new or kind of about to make that jump. I mean, we were talking off air, like this is my 3rd week in my business. Obviously I've been working on it for a year before now, but how do you get clients? Like, did you just know people and kind of put the word out?
So those couple days of work, that was the first one was one of my neighbors. They just moved in and needed some flooring. I threw some flooring in. And then after that, I basically started beating the bushes, introduced myself at the lumber yards, started printing business cards, got my licensing with the local jurisdiction, excise tax license, sales tax, the whole shebang. So there's a lot of paperwork involved in that. And then, man, I don't even know how I did it. I think Oh, HomeAdvisor. That was some of my first work
Yep.
through them, and it was really, really scary because there was not a lot of there wasn't a lot of working capital at that time. We're not talking like, thousands of dollars. We're talking, I was a 20-er at that point in time.
Yep. I feel ya. I feel ya. So you just kind of went for it. You just dove in. I mean, from what I'm hearing, it was just like you turn the switch off at one place and you turn it on at the next, and kind of just hope you land on your feet. Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, kind of. So the way that I describe it to people is, when you don't, some people are like, well, I'm going to try this out and we'll see how it goes. And maybe it'll go well or maybe it won't. Like it's going to go well because it has to go well.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. And, I had a newborn kid at that point in time and another, stepdaughter that needed caring for and a wife that was in school. And there was a lot going on. And, you just take it one day at a time and do the best you can. And I think the biggest thing was just straight up telling people, hey, I'm going to give it a go here.
Just kind of burning the ships basically and going for it. Yeah.
Yep.
So fast forward to now, you were telling me a bit about your day that you're doing today. You said you had 4 guys and list off the jobs that you're doing today?
Yeah, so I have 4 W-2 employees. And so those W-2 guys, they're split between a few places, and one of them's running around helping pick up the pieces. But they're working on a basement today. Electricians are there. They're there painting. And then I've got a framing crew working on framing a 3-story addition. And then I have 3 siding jobs going on right now. One's in the historic district in Sioux Falls. One's 100 miles south of that on the Missouri River, the southern border of South Dakota. And then one just right close to that historic park one. And we have a dental office floor plan remodel going on right now. So a lot of irons on fire.
Yeah, so you say you have 4 W-2. Do they chop themselves up into pieces to make a team? Like you've got like 50 things on the go. How do you get the manpower for all of that?
So the sub crew in Yankton, they're a really good siding crew. And basically we're doing a 12, 15 square siding replacement on 2 or 3 sides of the house. And then I've got my painter coming in behind that, and he's going to paint the whole house. And then the other 2 siding jobs are both sub crews, and they, they're not flash in the pan. Hey, we just met. Like these are, you give these guys a lot of work, and they know what you're expecting, and they know that you're in charge, and you coordinate everything, and it's a pretty seamless experience for them. So they like working for us.
Nice. So you deal with subcontractors a lot, and then have the 4 guys kind of do they do a lot of the project management? I mean, you're sitting here, you have a crazy day, and you're sitting here with me. So maybe dive into how you went from beating the bushes 4 years ago to now sitting here in the middle of a workday chatting with me.
So I didn't, I always thought like, oh, I'm a great tradesman. I'm not really that good of a tradesman. I'm pretty good on the tools. I would consider myself very apt in the trades. I'm not concerned about, any aspect of it. But the biggest turning point for me was when I realized like my earning potential and our company's potential and my family's future, it's never going to be anything better than what it is with me putting in 70, 80-hour weeks on the job site and material gathering, and if I don't find some help. And that was honestly scarier than going on my own, was figuring out how to start working with the payroll side of things and becoming an actual employer.
Yeah, and then you've got the responsibility of putting food on their tables too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other part of that is much like I'm sure it probably gets cold where you're at, for a good portion of the year.
Yeah.
Is the construction industry, a lot of guys are, they're seasonal. And one of the things that I try to stress to my guys is, hey, I'm gonna work really, really hard at making sure that we don't have slow times. And so right now we're lining up stuff to take us through the winter.
Love it. Love it. So are you booking, like, how far out are you booked now?
So there's, we've got 3 bigger decks, which will take us quite a while. They're big and complex.
Yeah.
But that additional will take us a while. We're probably 6 to 8 weeks out right now. But we're on the front end of the design process for several other things. Some big interior remodels, kitchens, additions.
Stuff that you can do inside in the winter.
Yeah. Basically, if somebody wants something done, I don't have a problem doing it as long as I can get the concrete in the ground during the summertime. And
Gotcha.
yeah, I would rather go around and be pouring concrete, making sure that we're standing in the cold, at least getting a paycheck.
Yeah. You're actually about the same latitude, I believe it is, as us. If you flew east, you basically bump into my city.
Perfect.
So yeah, you probably get pretty similar weather. It might be affected by the Great Lakes there a little bit, but yeah,
44 and some change.
Yeah, it's pretty cold here in the winter. So I think you're a higher elevation than us too. So I imagine.
Yeah, we're 1,500 feet, I think.
I don't actually know what we are, so I won't get into that conversation. But yeah, so talk to me a bit about getting employees, because I've had people ask the question as something they'd like to hear more about, is like, how do you go from one person, you're obviously your children and your wife are looking up to you to feed them, but then, now you're feeding 4 other families. So how do you kind of go about finding employees, keeping employees? Are they the same employees that have always been with you, or have you had turnover?
So one of my employees was actually the first part-time helper guy I ever used.
Wow.
And he actually worked, the 2 first employees I had were employed at the paving and mining company, and both of them got canned by that company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I knew both of them prior to. They had worked for me previously. And they're good guys. They may not be the best tradespeople, and they may not be the best at time management or organization or any of those things, but they're loyal, they're good people. And that's kind of.
It's all you can ask of someone.
Kinda, there's been ups and downs. So those were my first 2 guys. And then we kind of got into a stage where it was like, man, what do we do for guys? We got this work coming in, and those 2 guys were just stressed to the max. And then I started reaching out and finding subcontractors to fill in our gaps and making relationships with people and figuring out that the local market here, the biggest thing is that people just want their stuff done on time. They want someone who shows up and does what they say they're going to do. And whether it's a subcontractor or a W-2 guy, it doesn't really matter to them as long as everything's being managed the way that we normally would anyway. And
communicated, and they know what's going on.
Yeah.
Do you tell them, like, I've never dealt, like when I was doing framing, as I said, off air, I've never dealt with using the subcontractors. So do you tell the customer that a subcontractor is coming in, or is it your guys coming in? How does that work from a customer's perspective?
So if people ask, I'm straight up with them. I tell them exactly what's going on. But, these aren't guys that, we're just trying them out. There's been years of relationships built with everyone we use. And if if I don't know them, what I am going to do is reach out to the rest of the local community here and say, hey, do you know this guy? Do you know what he's all about? And that's the nice part about living in a state with not even 1 million people.
Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah. So,
which is a good thing and a bad thing for the people who try and fly by night.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing is a lot of the guys that we work with, they just want to go to work. They're really talented people, and they would be incredible tradesmen if they're employed by someone, but they want the freedom to, take a project or not take a project. Yep. And that's really nice for them because they say, hey, I'm going out of town with my family for 7 days. Don't schedule me.
I like that.
No problem, man.
So if you were to build, like say you were to double your revenue right now, would you get more W-2 workers, or would you find some more subcontractors?
So it would be a split. We're always hiring, and we're always working to find the best guys to fit within our system. So one of my guys, he's actually 15 years old.
Wow.
And yeah, he's a kid. So I live in rural South Dakota, outside there's no city. I'm literally looking at fields. And he lives 10 miles away, and he's homeschooled. So we have a kind of a schedule he works on, and he does great. He's been learning stuff, and I think that's a big thing in the trades that we got to start developing. The folks that are going to be the next generation of guys who own businesses. And he's half my age, but the thing is if he gets old enough to go on his own, I told him, I said, hey, you get your stuff together and you're going on your own. I don't want you working for me forever.
Yeah, there's a lot of push for people to go to university, but there's some good money to be made in contracting if you can make a good go of it. And people are not showed that. It's like, oh, it's a dirty, hard job. It's like, yeah, there's some good, honest living to be made there.
So I've got a 4-year degree, and when I got out of school, I was actually at that point in time, I was still turning wrenches for that company, working on heavy equipment and semis and loaders, trucks, trailers, big stuff. And I was making 2 to 3 times what all my classmates were. They're starting, I have a master's degree in accounting, and their starting wage was X dollars, and mine was triple that, just turning wrenches.
Wow.
So
yeah,
there's money in it.
I mean, I'm sure you follow the Mike Rowe movement with dirty jobs and everything, but I always love his conversations around that. It's like he was pushed down the university route, and he kind of ended up back around this, but like the contracting world, contractors get a bad rap too. The people do shoddy work, and so everybody's like, oh, it's not a good, honest living. But there's some really good quality outfits like the one that you're running, and a lot of other ones. So the more people that can find out about that, the better.
So I honestly think that you have the folks that are like, well, I'll just pay all up front. And you said, no, you back this up. You need to make sure that you're keeping me honest. Yeah. And, when they see that you literally are advocating on their behalf for them to do the right thing, they're like, what is up with this guy? Like, it's an interesting spot to be, because most people, like you said, there's a lot of weird people out there, and they do some weird stuff and have some interesting stories to go along with it, but try to do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. Yeah,
exactly. Speaking of weird stories, I'm going to pivot away a bit, because we had kind of sort of gotten into the conversation of how your brother ended up in Alaska, because I actually got on the call with you thinking you were in Alaska, which is great background research I did on you. But to finish the story about the Alaskan adventures.
So when we were little, I basically, we didn't get a lot of the talks, the family talks of, hey, we're doing this and we're doing that. Like, Mom and dad just said, hey, pack up your bags, week's worth of clothes, we're going. And we pulled the camper up there. And then we were up there for a few summers in a row. And I think it had a lot to do with the economy in the mid 90s on the West Coast. It was real bad. And so there were guys basically just fighting with each other down to the bottom dollar. And
like in Oregon.
Yeah. And I don't think my dad's all about that. I wouldn't want him to be with that many mouths to feed. So it was a very wise thing, to expose us to different places. And it was interesting because if we weren't at work with my dad, then my mother would end up taking us to museums and learning how to gold pan and learning about the pipelines and all sorts of stuff that most kids, they have no idea what makes the world work and how things got the way they are.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening, basically, I had the Callaways on, two of the other many, but I had Keith Jr. and Senior on previously, and so that's who we're talking about. His dad taking them up to Alaska, and they run a paving outfit. So he was basically getting paving jobs up there. Was he subbing for paving, or like how was he finding work up there?
I think a lot of it was door knocking. Some of it was small commercial work. Some of it was like private neighborhoods. Some of it was driveways. Some of it was patching. And I just think that there was, and there's still not. I think that my little brother, he's going to kill it. He's going to absolutely kill it because when you're in a market that small and things that happen outside of that market that make people really desirable to do their work, all you have to do is imitate those things. People have already created the system. You just say, okay, this is how we do it here. And then you talk to the sensibilities of the local population and say, hey, we're going to get it done. I
like it. Yeah. So would he drag all the paving equipment up as well? Like the whole crew up there for the summer? Wow.
Yeah, he would drag the crew up there and, gosh, I don't even know how it worked. We were pretty young and, a lot of it, it's weird to think about because now I end up finding myself doing the same weird things as my dad, where it's just kind of like, no, this has to happen. And you don't really think about it, and you don't really think about how odd or interesting it is, or, not normal suburban American things to do. But it was, I think he just paid one of his guys, hey, here's all the money to get you up there for fuel and food and whatever else, and we'll see you in a week and a half or 2 weeks.
Wild.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, you grew up with, in talking to your dad, like he just made it work for the family. And so you kind of grew up with that backbone of that understanding is that you just made it work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't know if you have any interesting stories from the Marines to chat about, or how maybe I'll rephrase that. Like, how did that experience? I honestly don't know how your tours were. I hope that they weren't gruesome and awful. But it's war. But how did that experience shape who you are today?
So the Marine Corps is the best and worst decision I ever made all at the same time. I owe an awful lot of the perceptions I have of the world to the Marine Corps. At the same time, an awful lot of what happens now on a daily basis is a product of the Marine Corps. In that it teaches you how to grow up very quickly. I was 22 years old and I had 18 younger guys, and they're only a year or two younger than you. Some of them are older than you. And they come from all different walks of life, and you learn how to navigate through trying to teach people stuff that you thought was normal, trying to teach them, things that they don't know, and they'll teach you things you don't know. And, guys that I would never, you don't run into them. They're from a completely different place in the world. and completely different upbringings. And so it was always fun. So both of my tours to Iraq were to Fallujah, Iraq. I was a radio operator. And my home unit was an artillery unit. So every time we go to a combat zone, I would get attached to an infantry unit so I could be their liaison to call for fire in case we needed artillery, air, mortars, naval guns. And yeah, did first deployment was 7-8 months, and second deployment was, I think, 3, 4, or 5 months in country, and then a bunch of time on the ship, on a Navy ship. That one that's burning in San Diego, that was the ship I was on.
No way.
Yeah, the Bonhomme Richard.
No way.
Yep.
How does that feel?
Vindication, man. Vindication. Nobody else has to have that same experience.
Not on that one anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild.
I mean, the Marine Corps has been around for 240 some years, and it ain't going nowhere. And I'm sure the people are going to have the same experience, just going to look a little different.
For sure. For sure. No, it's always interesting. I'm going to change earphones because I think something's going on weird in here. 1 second. I'm getting some weird feedback, and I don't know if it's from my earphones or what. Can you hear me?
Barely now.
Barely now?
Yeah.
How about now?
Yeah, perfect.
I'll just go with that then.
Right on.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see because that's obviously those were your formative years. And, you know, it affects different people differently. I mean, you seem like a very functioning human being, and I know you come from a family that I think instilled some good values in you before you even got there.
Yeah. So one of the big things that, you know, you learn is, you know, people are people. That's a big thing. And yeah, you're going to have to get along because you got to get along. That's the big thing about the Marine Corps. Like them, love them, hate them. It doesn't matter. They ain't going nowhere. You're stuck with them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people that you wouldn't be friends with normally end up being really great friends. And people have different views when you get out, and people have different views when you're in, and it's a really eye-opening experience because you know, there's a lot of responsibility, but I would encourage people, if they don't know what they're going to do, that's one way to go. You'll figure some stuff out.
Told what to do pretty fast. So.
Yeah, there's no question what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. No, I just find it interesting chatting with different people about their experience because, you know, it's different for everybody. Some people hate it. It seems like you've taken the good stuff and run with it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't always so keen on the Marine Corps. When I got out, I was a little bit morose. I'm glad I got out when I did. It's tough on your body. It's tough on your mind. And I really, 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 really have a lot of respect for spouses of people in the military because that's a hard deal. Like even when we were back in the States, we were gone 50-60% of the time out training and doing things and, you know, working from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. And it just was what it was.
Yeah. No, well, appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate you sharing a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's circle back a bit to the contracting world again, now that we went off some stories. A question I like to ask is, you know, if you were to start all over again, what would you do differently? In the current business, obviously not all the way back at day one of life, but like what would you do differently with Callaway Construction?
I would have probably done a little bit more thinking about how I was going to make it work. There's a lot of heartache associated around flying by the seat of your pants.
Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. So the big pivot point for that was like 2 years ago. We moved back from Minneapolis, and, you know, I hired those couple guys who I knew from the previous mining company I worked for, and that year I did 876,000 in gross revenue.
Wow.
And I had not a penny to show for it. Margins are too low, cost of producing the goods was too high. I wasn't managing things well. I wasn't bidding things well. I thought it was crooked to make people pay what they need to pay for a project. I thought all of these things, and that was a lot of, internal struggle in my own head of, well, I just feel like I'm charging too much for it. And then I realized at that point, I sought out a guy who name's Tom Reber. He has a podcast,
Yep.
Contractor Fight. And I talked to him on the phone, and basically he said, come on out to Colorado and we'll do a couple of days and I'm going to show you the error of your ways. And boy, that was an eye opener. I showed up with what I thought were legitimate financial statements. The other like light bulb moment, epiphany time was, I took my taxes to the accountant, and he looked at them. The previous years I'd done 200,000, 400,000, and then all of a sudden I make the jump to 870 something, and it, then it was like, whoa, we got to back this up here. This is darn near $1 million. We can't just say you did X, Y, and Z for that.
What do you mean?
He said the government's going to start looking at it, and it's going to start looking real funny if we don't have any records. So he did some backtracking on some stuff and reconciling all my bank accounts. And then he said, okay, this is what you owe. And that's when I knew I was in trouble. So.
And the percentage of $1 million is a lot of money to owe.
Yeah. That's an understatement, because the gut punch time, that was when he was like, hey, you owe $15,000, or I don't even remember what the amount was, but I didn't have it. It doesn't even matter what the amount was. It could have been $5, and if I didn't have it, it's still, but that's when I started realizing, like, man, I got some growing to do. I got some issues to figure out what's going on with my process of producing work and why I have nothing to show for it. Cause man, I'm working hard and I got nothing. So I flew to Colorado for 3 days, and that's not the end all be all of it, but the stuff that I learned, he taught me. He said, hey, here's the way you do this. You take your costs to produce the job and your materials, you add it all up, and then you figure out what you need for a gross profit percentage to support the business. And he said, there's no backing down from that. That is what it is. That's a big lesson for guys who are early on in their journey to learn. And the big thing about getting that price that you're going to tell people is you got to build the value. Hey, I am this, I am that. I'm me personally, I'm a James Hardy preferred siding contractor. I'm a Owens Corning preferred shingle installer. We have training in LP, James Hardy, obviously, and basically anything else we believe in, that's the only stuff we're going to install.
Love it. So what happened when you got out there? So I had another one of Tom's students on here, and the name's skipping my mind. He's a young kid. I believe he's 16, and he's running a landscaping business.
Oh yeah.
I forget his name. This is embarrassing. But anyway, he talked about how Tom had kind of helped him through stuff. So at some point, I'm gonna have to get Tom on the show here and chat with him a bit. But
Tom's a Marine.
Nice. Is he currently or like ex-Marine?
Like ex-Marine.
Yeah.
So he is a normal Marine. Just the the mindset thing of where he comes from is it resonates with guys who are in my shoes, because, you know, this is the way it is and this is the way we're doing it. And that's how it is.
He doesn't pull any punches. He tells you what's going on.
Yeah. And the biggest thing that a lot of guys need to hear is, you know, you need to know your value. Like, people are calling you because they need what it is that you're offering.
Yeah.
And if they don't think that you're offering, you know, what you're charging for, then they're probably not your customer.
Yeah. So I think that what you said earlier about, you know, you felt like you were charging too much, you know, coming from a, you know, the background that you did, you know, obviously very big-hearted. I know I was talking to your dad, you always had like 15 other kids living in your house at one time. I'm exaggerating a bit, but like, so pulling money out of people probably felt a little bit odd to you, right?
Yeah, when I first started, it was you know, everybody has, it's a weird thing to talk to people about money. Money is an odd thing, and the perception in society of money for anybody is, you never know who you're talking to about money. But once you kind of get over that and you realize, like, hey, I'm providing people with great value, and we're doing things for our community. And the point in time, actually, Gabe, one of my brothers, told me this. I said, hey, I'm thinking about dropping my price a little bit. He said, no, you do not do that under any circumstance. And I said, why is that? And he said, that is an absolute injustice to yourself, to that customer, and to your community. And most importantly, to your community, because if we're broke and, you know, we can't go to work and we can't employ these people, and the company is having trouble paying taxes, we don't sponsor things, we don't give to the Boys and Girls Club, we don't, you know, just freely give of what it is that we're out there working for. And then we can't do that. And then we're just another person.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I love the injustice part of it. It's like, it takes it to a whole different level. It's not even about, you know, you grabbing money. It's like, this is, you know, you owe it to your customer to charge what you're charging.
Yeah, the big epiphany around that is it takes a long time to get your head wrapped around that thought. It's really, really, really tough. For me, it was, you know, because my perception of money was, oh gosh, these people are they're just ridiculously rich, and what, you know, different people. And, you know, your perception of money is probably different than my perception of money. But when it comes to it, like, the injustice to that customer is, if you're not getting paid what you're worth, you're not going to be happy showing up there.
Yeah.
You're not going to be happy going the extra mile and sending the guys out there. You know, 4 guys for a day, that's a pretty serious payroll expense. And any of my customers, we have something go south, I'll send them right down there. I don't care.
Yeah.
It makes the process much more seamless when they know, hey, these guys, they will come out and fix it. They'll do what's right.
Yeah, you have the value to back it up, but like, no, I love that, because money, I mean, it's very tempting when you're starting out, and I think, you know, if you're working on your confidence and want to test something, sure, get someone to just pay the minimum to cover your costs or whatever, or do it out of pocket, whatever. Like, different people have different mentalities, but like, once you're good at what you do, you got to charge for it. And even, you know, once you've proven that it works and you're getting processes in place, you've got to charge for it, because 1, you're going to be super excited to work with that customer. 2, they're going to get value. And 3, like you said, that ripple effect of the community, and just providing value to your employees and all of that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even go looking for stuff to do, but it happens. You know, we had our Boys and Girls Club in Sioux Falls. They have 450 some kids, and they had them like all spread out all over town in these random places. And there was a state-owned school for the deaf that they figured out a way to purchase it, and they needed some help outfitting it and stuff. So we went and donated a couple of days of labor and all the materials and stuff for them to get set up in their game room. And
nice.
They're super happy with it. I mean, you know, that leads to more work for us too. You know,
Really?
there's other stuff that we can, other paying work that we'll get from that. And that's you take the small with the big and the good with the bad, and it should all work itself out eventually.
I love it. So yeah, so I mean, we kind of went down this tangent, which I really like, because I always like talking cost. I like talking cost, employees. Those are things that people really struggle with. They're not charging enough, and they're not finding people. So the question kind of came up, or I had posed the question, what would you change? And that was Tom Reber, I think, was kind of the big change a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so I would have gotten a bookkeeper, and I would have probably, I probably would have developed a few systems like I kind of have now. You know, I used to think that lumber yards were overcharging me, and you know, the farther along you get and the better your relationship with those people at your local lumber yards and your local suppliers are, then you find out those people really truly care about the same things you do, you know. And gosh, there's a lot of situations. I mean, one happened, this is a frequent situation. We build a lot of decks.
Yep.
And so these deck rails that we put on, you know, they're pre-made, but they sometimes start missing pieces and parts and random stuff. And, you know, if you buy from a big box store, you're going to have to go back and buy whatever piece you're missing. You know, the local people, they'll say, hey, I'm short 2 post caps and bases, or I'm short this one post, and they'll get it straightened out. And, you know, I don't know if we get charged for it. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't. I don't know. But I can tell you right now that having somebody advocating on our behalf to make somebody's experience better, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, and then they're, like you said at the beginning, you went around to the lumber yards, but they're going to point people to you for jobs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I would say, well, in the past week, we've sold $100 and some odd $1,000 from stuff that the lumber yards pointed towards us.
Wow.
So, you know, that's gross sales. Obviously, there's costs involved in producing that, but
materials and labor and all of that.
Yeah. But that particular guy that sends me those projects, you know, he was the first person I met at the lumber yard. Wow. And that was over 4 years ago. And, you know, I had my questions about who he was at first, and now he knows who I am and what I do and how I operate. And, hey, this is how I budget things, and this is the experience I want to give to people. And he knows that. And he'll just say, hey, this is the guy. If you're looking for this type of project to get done and in this amount of time, this is the guy you're talking to.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I believe it's Brian Hess. You must know Brian because he's worked with your family as well. But your network is your net worth, like that. It popped in my head because I just saw him on a thing earlier this week with that. But it's so true. Like the people you connect with, they're connected to their network, and like it's having that in place is so important.
Yep. There's another tangent on that, and you haven't asked about it at all, but it's something that's really, really important to me, and it's the wage that we pay our guys. You know, it feels really expensive to me every time we process payroll, which it should be, and it's a serious thing. That they have their families to feed, and we are paying the best we possibly can at this point in time. Yep. And the second the company starts doing better, they need to benefit from that. And, you know, my family is the one taking the risk, but without them, there's not a lot that I can do.
Yeah.
And so the typical talk with my subcontractors is, hey, what do you think is fair? And
you're talking about subcontractors as well.
Oh, subcontractors and my employees.
Yep.
You know, that I don't remember when I was, you know, I can tell you that my 15-year-old employee makes darn near double what I made less than 10 years ago working for somebody else.
Wow.
And The thing is I pay well, but I expect well too. You got to put the work in. And my personal thought is if people aren't worried about their, $2 an hour more raise, or, oh gosh, I wish I made $1 more, then there's a lot of other things you can focus on.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a topic I've chatted about with a couple of people, is how do you retain people? I mean, we kind of touched on it and kind of went off on a different tangent, but yeah, that's paying for people. I see it all the time in the groups. People are complaining, it's like, oh, it's so hard to find people, and then once you have them, they leave and they steal your tools and they do this and they do that. And you just look at how they treat people in the group, and it's like, well, you're probably not treating them super well. You're not treating them like humans that have needs as well, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
And so there is an understanding, and this as a person, I know my father to be this way. I know my older brother to be this way. I know all of my brothers to be this way. If somebody needs something and I can help, you can bet I'm going to help them.
Yeah.
And, even if it doesn't make a lot of sense, even if it doesn't put me ahead, even if it leaves me vulnerable, and a guy quit, I lent him $2,000, over the course of several months. Is what it is. He obviously wasn't a good fit, and that's just part of it.
Yeah.
But my guys know, that I'm looking out for them. And so the way that it's structured for employment with me, if you're a W-2 guy, is you have your employee handbook, and it lays out exactly what it is, your skill set, what you bring to the table, and this is the range you're going to be in. And, you hit the next skill set, and we're going to start working into that next pay range. You start getting up there where I have a guy named Jeremiah. He's my lead guy. I wouldn't be able to sit here without him. And so he gets paid pretty darn well, real well. And we're working on a way to start transitioning into a profit first sort of deal, to where we can start making it more advantageous for us to all produce projects on time, on budget, and do what needs to be done, rather than worrying about time clocks and weird stuff. Then
everybody kind of takes the profits as they trickle down through.
Yeah. And so I'm probably going to start, and I just had the talk with him last week. So I've got a lot of preliminary work to do on my end, but the big thing is that, I got to get some stuff set up. We're selling like hotcakes and the tough part is getting everything figured out of what percentage is equitable. How do we pay it out? How does it work? And I think once we get it figured out, I think, he's going to start seeing the benefit from that. And I think that a lot of the other guys that work for me, they're going to need something. And I got to figure out how that works, because coming from a position of gratitude where I really am thankful for what they do and the time they put in and the sweat and hard effort, they got to know that. Even if it isn't dollars that makes their world tick, it's important to make sure they're not worried about the dollars.
Yeah. I would actually love to have that conversation with you once you figured it out, because like I said, I was just meeting with a guy who is excited about potentially partnering with me, or we're not quite sure how we're going to structure it. But I'd love to figure out some way that, I take the risk as the business owner, but he is there, some sort of profit sharing deal where I take the risk and still own the company, but then he's very motivated by, performance and the output and input that he gets based on how the company does.
Who you need to talk to?
Who?
My dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty sharp on it, and he's he's been in business 30 some years, and he's employed a lot of people to take risks on his behalf. And he's been in the exact position you're in. You're looking for that guy, and it's one of those things where, I'm sitting here telling you that this is what we're going to do, but I would not have half of this knowledge had I not had my brothers and my father to lean on. And, they've kind of shortcut me to being, I don't consider myself successful, but not destitute, not making really stupid decisions time after time.
I love it. Yeah, I'll have to get him on the phone again. I enjoyed talking with him. So yeah, no, that'd be awesome. Yeah, because it's something I haven't navigated before. I'm fresh out of the womb business owner, so I've got a lot to learn for sure. So
the biggest thing is, there's one thing that I do know, and it's a really tough lesson to learn because you really want to value people. You don't want to pay too much too soon, because then complacency can set in. That I'm so valuable to this person, and it really is. That's a horrible way to put it. I don't know any other better way to do it, but you can ruin people that way.
Sure.
And that can ruin a relationship, and it can ruin their efforts. And, it's one of those things where unless you've walked down that street a half dozen times or more, you may not have the answers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of want to get some input from people who've done it before, so I don't make stupid decisions. I don't want to reinvent all the wheels on this journey.
No, a couple is all right.
Yeah.
Rounding off a corner is okay, not the whole thing.
No, exactly. Well, Jason, I think we've been chatting for almost an hour here. I don't know what your schedule looks like. I've got a call coming up here in about 15 minutes. So what I like to do is kind of wrap that. We could talk for hours, obviously, but I think that'll have to wait for another time. But maybe if you could wrap up with, kind of one or two thoughts that you would have for a new business owner, an old business owner, but some wrap up thought from you on the business world, on personal life, some word for people.
So the thing that I find myself talking to people about the most these days is, it's a uncertain environment we live in, and everybody's so sick of hearing that. I'm sick of saying it. My personal belief on that is, there's only a recession in people's minds, and there's only an idea of that there's no work and there's no employees and there's no this and there's no that. That stuff's all in your mind, and that's where it needs to stay, and then it needs to leave. The less you voice that, the less it's true.
Yeah.
And the big thing is that, I see a lot of folks that are clamming up in this time, and I think that as small business owners, as the backbone of free capitalistic societies, we are going to be what pulls what your country, my country, collectively, these large scale world economies out of a funk. And I personally don't believe that there's a recession. I wake up every day and tell myself that it's going to be an awesome day, and we're just going to kill it.
Yep.
Even if I have headaches, every day you wake up, and especially in construction, you're going to have headaches.
Yeah.
Let's see, I got my phone here. I have missed 9 calls. And so all 9 of those calls are potentially a problem. But what I can tell you is the difference that separates these problems from the next guy's problems down the street is I already know I'm going to have them. They're going to be there tomorrow. They're going to be there the day after. You got to turn the crap sandwich into something that tastes a little better.
Yep.
And you got the day to do it. So
I love it.
Yep.
Well,
that's my 2 cents for what it's worth. I want people to know, well, quick side note. I got a call from, so I bought buffalo. I have American bison at my house.
Okay.
And
What?
yeah. So I'm a buffalo rancher on the side.
Okay.
And I got a call from a guy I met at the auction where I bought him. And he said, hey, man, how's things going? And we got to talking. And he said, man, I'm really hurting. The cattle market's tough. And I ended up just telling him the same exact thing. I said, whatever you believe to be true is going to be true.
Yeah.
I said, if you wake up every day and say, hey, man, we're going to kill it. He's in a commodities market. So he's only going to get paid whatever the commodity says. But if he truly, truly, truly believes it, he's going to have a better day. Regardless of what the beef price is that day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I said, you do what you can do. You control what you can control, and the other stuff, it's got to take care of itself. And you get up every day and do your best. So
man, that's so true. Mindset, people have used the word too much. I almost don't like using the word mindset, but for lack of a better term, mindset is so key. Getting yourself in a good space before everybody gets up. We could talk for a whole nother hour about that, but we don't want you to miss 10 more calls.
I'm horrible about getting up in the morning. That's what the whole 75 hard thing's been helping me with.
Oh, are you doing it too?
Yeah, I'm on day 8.
Yeah.
On day 8.
I don't know if you saw that I am back to day 2.
It's all right. Lessons cost money and good ones cost lots.
Exactly. Yeah, I was talking to someone who was like, I'm still all in. It's just, I can't complete it saying I completed it if I missed a day. So here we go. Let's start again. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right on.
Excellent. Well, I greatly appreciated your time. What I'll do is I'll end the recording here, and then we'll just wrap up off air, and we'll go on our merry ways.
Right on, man.
Appreciate you, Jason.
Thank you.